Rebecca Shabad is a political reporter for CBSNews.com. She joins us from Capitol Hill. We're up against the clock here, Rebecca. The majority leader says Friday, I want the new bill. Is that going to come? And let me also introduce Rahn, who is a political editor for CBSNews.com, who joins us from our Washington bureau. Good to talk to both of you. Rebecca, you first. Overly ambitious on the part of the majority leader?
You know, it's a great question. As you mentioned, Senate Republican leaders are aiming to have a newly crafted health care bill by tomorrow. Now, that's a lot of pressure on Republicans who face internal divisions over how to move forward. Mitch McConnell wants to have the bill crafted by Friday so that the CBO, as you mentioned, can have the bill scored over the July 4th recess. However, it doesn't look very pretty right now. Negotiations are ongoing, and Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, just spoke to reporters a little while ago and said that if there is no plan by tomorrow, then it's going to be even harder for Senate Republicans to come up with an agreement when they return to Capitol Hill.
Well, let's talk about this CBO scoring. What, realistically speaking, what is Mitch McConnell hoping for? Because the numbers from the CBO score not good. Here we're talking about adding funds to help out with the opioid problem in this country, $45 billion. Are these cosmetic changes that could actually have an effect on the CBO score, or does something more fundamental and substantive have to happen?
Well, what they're also looking at right now is the tax cuts within the legislation that have not been popular, particularly with moderates. And if they can adjust that, that might have a significant impact on the CBO score. But the big problem that we're looking at here is we have a divided caucus, we have an unpopular Congress, we have an unpopular president, we have a deeply unpopular piece of legislation. They can fiddle, they can change this and that, but the ultimate reality is still going to be a bill that nobody loves, and they've already lost the PR war on. It's going to be extremely difficult to force that through in any situation.
Rebecca, before we went on the air here, I was reading a headline that Leader McConnell is threatening to work with the Democrats. I mean, God forbid there should be some bipartisanship on this. What is the likelihood? What are you hearing there on Capitol Hill about the possibility of Republicans reaching out to some of the moderate Democrats to see if they can get them on board in order to reach that magic number of 50?
Right. So a few days ago, Mitch McConnell decided to delay the vote on this health care bill until after the July 4th recess. After he made that decision, the entire Senate Republican conference went over to the White House to meet with President Trump on how to move forward. Mitch McConnell came out to the mics and said, you know what, if we can't get this done, then maybe we'll have to work with Democrats. That's certainly the wish of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York, who has invited Republicans to negotiate with Democrats. Republicans, on the other hand, say Democrats don't want to negotiate with them either. When I mentioned Lindsey Graham before, he also said just a little while ago that he does think that Republicans should come together with Democrats and negotiate how to improve Obamacare and not just tear it apart.
I mean, Will, I guess I'm just talking about the fact that it would be some kind of a threat to even suggest the idea of bipartisanship. I mean, it used to be when big pieces of legislation that affect such a wide chunk of the country were being debated in the halls of Congress, that bipartisanship was not such a bad thing.
It's symptomatic of the culture here in Washington that is extraordinarily partisan at the moment. But to your point, there have been a lot of people, Republicans as well, who have urged the president to embrace a bipartisan solution here, if only to spread around some of the pain. Again, we're talking about an unpopular piece of legislation. If you can get some Democrats on board, if you can get them signing on to the legislation, then the Republicans won't be totally responsible for what comes out of it at the end of the day. Still, this is not...
Politically speaking, let me, to your point, Will, let's just put up, because the Fox News poll out finds that 54% of voters are opposed to this GOP plan. Only 27% support it. So this is something that if they can spread the pain, as you say, it might not be such a bad thing.
At the same time, these are Republicans who got to Washington promising to repeal and replace Obamacare. If they do not fulfill that promise, they're going to disappoint the grassroots. They're going to disappoint the most active Republican voters. and inviting primary challenges in some situations.
All right, let's switch gears for a moment, because the other big story that is sort of sucking all the oxygen out of the room today are tweets from the president this morning attacking an MSNBC host, Mika Brzezinski. And we just want to put the tweets up on the screen. People most likely have heard about this by this point, but the president tweeting out earlier today, "I heard poorly rated Morning Joe speaks badly of me. Then how come low IQ Crazy Mika, along with Psycho Joe, came to Mar-a-Lago 3 nights in a row around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me. She," meaning Mika Brzezinski, "was bleeding badly from a facelift. I said no." Okay, so that's a comment on the looks of a television news journalist. The Deputy Press Secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, was on Fox earlier today. She defended the president's tweet. Let's take a listen.
I don't think that the president's ever been someone who gets attacked and doesn't push back. There have been an outrageous number of personal attacks, not just to him, but to, frankly, everyone around him. People on that show have personally attacked me many times. This is a president who fights fire with fire and certainly will not be allowed to be bullied by liberal media and the liberal elites within the media or Hollywood or anywhere else.
I get it, but is that necessary?
Look, I think what's necessary is to push back against unnecessary attacks on the president, both personally. I've seen far worse things come out of that show, again, directed not just at the president, but everyone around him.
Okay, Will, fighting fire with fire. Is that what this is?
I was struck today, one of the president's most outspoken defenders, the radio host Laura Ingraham, she's even critiquing the White House's response to this, wondering why there's been no message discipline. This is a huge day for this White House in the midst of an energy week that nobody in the White House seems to be talking about or even mentioning in the slightest. And you got to wonder what the political calculation, if any, was behind these tweets. Everyone in Washington, particularly Republican senators, are so edgy right now. They're so anxious. They are worried about embracing this in legislation that the president has repeatedly embraced. And into that environment, the president is tweeting these things, and Republican senators, moderates like Susan Collins, are getting out there and saying, "This is ridiculous, Mr. President. You can't be talking like this." This is the most charitable way to look at this is that it's an extraordinarily counterintuitive way to try to get this legislation passed or try to get anything out of Congress this week.
Well, that sounds like a very generous analysis there. Let's take a listen to the Speaker of the House. And Rebecca, I'll ask you to comment on the other side. This was Paul Ryan, who was asked about this earlier today.
Obviously, I don't see that as an appropriate comment. I think, look, what we're trying to do around here is improve the tone and the civility of the debate. And this obviously doesn't help do that.
Okay, Rebecca, so what does this do for the president and his relationship with these lawmakers, both in the House and the Senate, who he really needs in order to push his agenda forward? They don't know what to make of it. What's going on here?
A number of Republican lawmakers and Democratic lawmakers have come out against President Trump's tweet this morning, including Senator Susan Collins, as Will mentioned, and Speaker Paul Ryan has now said that it was inappropriate. Senator James Lankford came out with an interesting statement a little while ago, saying that he was sitting in a hearing and he was thinking about the congressional baseball game shooting earlier this month that left Steve Scalise wounded, and how the heated rhetoric may have prompted that shooting. He said that President Trump's tweet does not improve that atmosphere, and that he should stop tweeting like that.
Will, I mean, I just wonder, I know that the president's supporters liked the fact that he was not a traditional politician. They liked the fact that he came from outside the typical world of Washington. Is this, though, what they liked about him? Is this what they want? How do they respond to all of this?
Again, I'd go back to Laura Ingraham today, who is someone with millions of listeners and is a diehard supporter of the president. When you start losing Laura Ingraham, it's hard to think that you're impressing all of the segments of your base. Trump voters love the idea that he fights, that he's politically incorrect. At the same time, this is a very inside baseball Washington fight. Morning Joe is a favorite show of the Excella corridors. We call it. It's New York, it's Washington. I don't think Trump voters really elected him to get into fights with Mika Brzezinski. There's going to be, I'm sure, some analysis defending the president, saying that this was some grand distraction, that we're out here today talking about the tweets and not the health care bill. I think that's going to be a tough one to sell.
Rebecca, last question for you, because of course this is not the first time the president has gone after women, the appearance of women journalists. Not the first time he has mentioned blood when referring to women journalists. I just wonder, is this sort of the straw that breaks the camel's back? Is this the tweet that does some kind of a lasting or serious damage to this president politically?
You know, it's a great question, but as we've learned throughout this administration, that the news cycles just evaporate pretty quickly. After the Access Hollywood tape came out in early October, Republicans came out against President Trump, and that was only a few weeks before the election, and Trump won. Tomorrow, we will probably be talking about something completely different, so it probably will not have a major effect on really anything.
Rebecca Shabad and Will Rahn of CBSNews.com. Good to talk to you both. Thanks very much.
Thank you.